So, good morning, and we're continuing with our study of Megillah. We're on 13a4 in the edition that we're using, and we're in the discussion by the Gemara of the preparations for choosing the new queen, and all of the maidens from all over the empire have been brought to Shushan, including, of course, Esther. We talked a little bit about how Esther had a certain charm, and that Heget's Risa Anashim, that Hege, the harem keeper, liked her particularly and treated her very nicely. But everybody was getting, the special treatment for their encounter with the king. So we're at the left-hand column, 13a4, a few lines from the top. The Megillah lists among the treatments. Okay, who's going to read for us today? I think, Bill, would you like to read for us today?
I think I might.
It's been like a week since you've read.
Yeah, I think it's about time.
Yeah, all right.
Okay. The Megillah lists among the treatments used by the Maidens who were candidates to become Achashverosh's queen, 6 months with oil of myrrh. The Gemara inquires, what is oil of myrrh? There's a difference of opinion regarding this.
You would think something like this they'd be able to all agree on.
Yeah, oil of myrrh.
They can't even agree on this. Go ahead.
Rabbi Chia bar Abba says balsam. Rav Huna says oil of myrrh is oil of olives that have not attained 1/3 of their normal growth.
Okay, so they're very, very young olives, very, very young olives, and that's the. So okay, go ahead. I have nothing to say. I have nothing to say about this.
Nothing at all.
Beyond my expertise completely.
Okay. The Gemara cites a baraita that mentions this type of oil. It was taught in a baraita. Rabbi Yehuda says on pakinon is oil of olives that have not attained 1/3 of their normal growth.
Keep going.
The Gemara continues. And why do people smear it, oil of myrrh, on their bodies?
Why is this such a great, cosmetic thing that they're making a special treatment of this?
Because it removes the hair and causes the skin to glow.
Okay, so this is like a perfect advertisement, in all of the magazines about this is a, what's the word? A depilatory? Is that what it's called?
Yeah.
Right. So you can have two things at the same time from this. You want glowing skin. This is the moisturizer for you. Plus, look at all this other stuff that it does. Okay, very good. So I think that this piece of the Gemara was probably sponsored by a company
commercial
back in the day. Yeah. All right.
One of the rabbis must have had stock in this company.
Yeah.
The Megillah relates the procedure followed by each maiden whose turn it was to visit the king. In the evening, she would come, and the next morning she would return to the second house of the women in custody of Shashgaz, the king's chamberlain, guardian of the concubines. She would not go again to the king unless the king desired her, and she was summoned by name.
Okay, so that's the full verse. So each maiden has a turn with the king, and then she gets put into this second house. And we should understand that if he doesn't think that she should be queen, that doesn't mean she goes back home again and she can resume her life, right? This is a life-changing thing. She then is forever going to be the king's property and the king's concubine, right? She just won't be, the queen herself. All right, go ahead.
The Gemara notes, Rabbi Yochanan said, from the account of the disgraceful behavior of that wicked man, Achashverosh, that he consorted with many women and then sent them away, we indirectly learn a positive aspect about him, that he would not have marital relations during the day.
Okay, so this puts out a particular view of the sages, that it's not appropriate to have sexual relations in the daylight. You should wait until nighttime. It should be in the dark. It should be something that is that takes place, in more private times and places. Different kinds of aspects of that come into play. The daylight should be a time when people are out there working for a living and doing things in the world, and the idea that this should be a time of just pleasure taking was frowned upon by the sages, and it was considered a lack of modesty, right? Because it was daylight is the time when you can see everything. The modesty is not simply that other people might see what you're doing. The modesty is also that you will see what you're doing. There's a kind of a little bit of an ascetic, or I don't know if that's the right word, but a sense of, they're not too encouraging here of two people seeing each other. In the simplest meaning of the term. It's better for this kind of stuff to be done quiet in the darkness. Does it mean that they were romantics and they thought that was a more romantic way to do it? Well, everybody's different. So different strokes for different folks is a truism. And they're trying to say, no, there's one better way. So Achashverosh was doing this every night with these concubines, and look at that at night, but not during the day. So Rabbi Yochanan says you got to give him credit at least for that kind of dealing with people in the appropriate way, right? No, what am I going to tell you? This was their sense. I want to just point out that on the other hand, they are not prescriptive about what you do in the dark. They're not telling you there's only one way to do things in the dark. What they're telling you is do whatever the heck you want in the dark, but let it be in the dark. So, make of that whatever you wish. Okay, the Megillah continues.
The Megillah continues, and Esther found favor in the eyes of all who saw her. The Gemara says, Rabbi Elazar said, this teaches that she appeared to each person as a member of his own nation.
Okay, what does that mean? Anybody?
I'm just looking
at Jen.
She had one of those faces that is ambiguously ethnic, and you just you look at them and you could be one of 100 ethnicities. I have no idea what you are. So
Okay.
Anybody who's
But
looking
here
at her and think that it's their ethnicity. That's what they code as.
Right. So they code that as that, and why is that good?
Well, then everybody is more biased towards her. I mean, if you think she's one of your own, you're going to be a little biased to her.
Right. So it's recognizing, yes, there are people that have a fascination with the exotic, with the group that doesn't look like them. But a lot of times, not always, but a lot of times that sense is a kind of from our historical experience, a kind of imperialistic fascination, right? To subdue the savage, to subdue the one that's not like you. And the more conventional attraction is to be with somebody who is sort of like you. So this is the Gemara is recognizing that somehow she had this magic ability to be appealing to everybody on their own terms, right? They felt she wasn't threatening, and she wasn't weird. And a lot of times, unfortunately, our notions of beauty are skewed by saying, if you have certain kinds of features that you're used to, of course, within, or that you've been made to be used to, that's beauty. But somebody that doesn't have that kind of set of features, that's ugly, right? So, and we do that racially, we do that ethnically, we do that, in all kinds of different ways. So the Gemara is recognizing that that's the way people are, that people do make those kinds of prejudicial judgments. And somehow Esther was able to avoid those kinds of stigmatizing judgments. She was able to sort of be appealing for anybody, whatever their own prejudices were. Okay, a kind of a gentle recognition of how biased we can really be. Okay.
The Gemara says, Rabbi Elazar teaches, the Megillah continues, and Esther was taken to King Ahasuerus into his palace in the 10th month, which is the month of Tevet.
All right, so the 10th month is the month of Tevet. We're about to go into the 7th month, right? We're about to go into the 7th month, which is the month of Tishrei, right? So Tishrei, Cheshvan, Kislev, Tevet. So Tevet is the 10th month. So it's the month, or to keep it in terms of calendar-wise, it's the month after or into the end of Hanukkah. The end of Hanukkah goes into Tevet. So think about it in terms of seasons. So we're talking about the wintertime. So go ahead.
The Gemara considers the significance of the fact that it was the month of Tevet. The cold winter month of Tevet is the month in which one's body derives more pleasure from another's body because of the body warmth generated. Excuse me. And Ahasuerus would be more likely to desire Esther in such a month.
Okay, so that's the translation of 5 words in the Gemara. So that paragraph, the simple translation is, right, it's the month where one body enjoys another body, right? Simple. It's good to bundle up with somebody. So because it's cold. So that was an added piece of luck for Esther. Okay, go ahead.
The Megillah continues, and the king loved Esther more than all the women, and she won more of his grace and favor than all the other virgins.
Right,
Why does this?
Hold on a second. Do we have the rest of the verse? So if I'm not mistaken, let me see what the verse is exactly. What is it? 2:17.
2:17.
2:17. Yes. So there's a continuation. The verse, this is only half of the verse. The verse goes, the king loved Esther more than any of the other women, and she found favor and love before him from all the other young women, or virgins, if we want to translate it that way. And he put the crown of royalty on her head, and he made her queen instead of Vashti. That's the complete verse. In our community, I chose that verse as a verse that we should say out loud when we do the Megillah reading. In the tradition, as we inherited it, there is a number of verses that we say out loud, and they're all verses of turning points in the story. But for instance, we say the verse that we had earlier about Mordecai, Ish Yehudi haya b'Shushana birau, Shmo Mordecai ben Shimi ben Yoyer ben Kish, Ish Yemini. Right, so there was this Jewish person named Mordecai. So we say that out loud by the whole congregation, and then the Megillah reader reads it from the Megillah. And later on, we have other verses, Lahudim Haita Orav Simcha V'Sason Bikar. Right, so that at the end, when we finally have the salvation and so on, but there's no verses in the tradition that there are 4 verses, if I'm not mistaken. There are no verses in the tradition that recognize Esther's special role in turning the tables, literally. So I've instituted that we recite this verse as a turning point verse in the story. And we say this verse out loud first as a community, and then the Megillah reader continues. Okay, so anyway, the Gemara is concentrating not on the fact that the last part of the verse says she was chosen as queen, but rather the first part of the verse, and it says, why does
the verse mention both women and virgins? Rav said, if Achashverosh desired to experience a virgin, he experienced it in the person of Esther. To experience a non-virgin, he experienced it.
Okay, so he considered himself a sexual connoisseur, and depending on what his appetite was at a particular time, he decided, do I want somebody inexperienced or do I want somebody experienced? Do I want somebody who's a virgin or do I want somebody who's not a virgin? And that's why the verse says, Mikol Hanashim, from all the women, and Mikol Habetulot, from all the virgins. So the women means women who are not virgins, but nevertheless, Achashverosh took his pleasure with anybody and everybody according to what he wanted. Okay.
The Megillah continues that upon making Esther his queen, and the king made a great banquet.
That's the next verse, verse 18.
The Gemara explains that this, as well as the other activities mentioned in these verses, was intended by Achashverosh to induce Esther to reveal her origins. He made a feast in her honor, yet she still did not reveal to him her origins. He remitted the head tax in her name, yet she still did not reveal to him her origins. And he sent gifts to important people in her name, yet she still did not reveal to him her origins.
Okay, so the Gemara is going back to this idea that we had all the way at the beginning when Mordecai tells her that she's entering this contest. He says to her, don't tell anybody who you are, right? And so now the Gemara picks this up and goes, okay, so now that this mysterious woman has been chosen as queen, the king wants to really know who she is. And she's not telling him. Look at note 70.
Note 70. All these items are listed in the verse, which reads, and the king made a great banquet, the banquet of Esther, and he proclaimed an amnesty for the provinces, and he gave gifts worthy of the king. Maharsha notes that since the beginning of the verse already states that he made a great banquet after crowning the queen, it would seem superfluous to describe it as the banquet of Esther. This then indicates that he was dedicated to her honor. It was dedicated to her honor to induce her to divulge her origins.
Okay, so the king is like coming over to her and saying, I'm so devoted to you. I think you are so amazing. You're so terrific. Look at what I'm doing for you. So tell me, who are you?
Who are you?
And she evades, revealing her origins. And he goes, look at how much I'm making a big deal about you. Come on, tell me who you are. And she evades. And he says, and look at whatever else I'm doing. Right? He's knocking himself out. Nevertheless, she keeps on keeping her identity a secret. Okay. Later on, what will Achashverosh say to her when she finally comes to start turning things around with regard to Haman? He goes, my queen, what do you want? I'll give you up to half my kingdom. I'll give you anything. So apparently he has quite a fascination with her, right? And nevertheless, she's not giving in. Okay.
That may add to her allure, the kind of the mystery kind of thing.
Right.
Some people are very attracted to that.
Yeah.
The Megillah continues from 13a5. And when the maidens were gathered together the second time, etc.
Okay, so the verse, okay, I mean, you'll get a piece of the verse later, but just look at 72 for a second.
72, the verse in its entirety reads, and when the maidens were gathered together a second time, and Mordecai was sitting at the king's gate.
Okay, so that's the idea. So somehow or other, the contest is over. Esther is the winner. And then all of the contestants are brought back together, right, for a second time. So it's like the end of the show, right? Now all of them are there. So the Gemara asks,
where are we? We're on
Achashverosh.
Since Achashverosh had already made Esther queen, why did he gather the maidens a second time? The Gemara explains that Achashverosh went and sought counsel from Mordecai as the way to induce Esther to reveal her origins. Mordecai said to Achashverosh, "A woman is not made jealous except through intimacy with another woman. Thus, by gathering the maidens again, you will make Esther jealous and force her to reveal her origins to you." Ahasuerus followed Mordecai's advice, and even so, she still did not reveal to him her origins, as it is written in the next verse. Esther did not tell of her kindred, etc.
Okay, so the verse tells us that all the other maidens were gathered a second time, and Mordecai was there. So this is what the Gemara then uses as its understanding, as basis of its understanding. Oh, so Mordecai is part of this. Mordecai is part of this event planning. Why are the other maidens brought together again? So the Gemara imagines it's still part of the king's desire, strong desire to figure out who is this person. And so therefore he goes to Mordecai as one of his advisors. And he says, Mordecai, come on, you raised this person. He goes, I have no idea. She was a foundling. I don't know the first thing about her. I never was able to find out. So he says to Mordecai, well, what are her soft spots? How can I do something that'll get her to reveal who she is? So according to this way of reading it, Mordecai then says, you know what? She'll get jealous. She'll see that you're not so, exclusively focused on her. You're interested in all the other women just as much. And that then will make her get anxious. And then she'll spill the beans. Then she'll tell you who she is. So try this out. So therefore the king follows this advice. But nevertheless, Esther doesn't break her silence. She keeps her secret. David.
I'm trying to remember whether we've uncovered this, discussed this yet or not, but is there a reason for her keeping this secret? And is Mordecai acting contrary to her? There's all this scheming and counter scheming and secrets and stuff. Has this been elaborated yet, or is it yet to come?
So we've speculated about it a little bit already, and it's going to come up in full force in another minute or two as well. But yeah, this is definitely bringing it to a head. What's the big deal? What do we imagine? What is the big deal about keeping this a secret? And what do we imagine at the moment? What kind of suppositions can we make?
Well, I imagine that if she had revealed, and then Haman brought forth his plan, and Ahasuerus accepted it, then it would have been difficult for Ahasuerus to change his mind, which is to say that he would have accepted Haman's plan, even knowing that it could affect Esther, and then it would have been difficult for him to change his mind. Right.
So there's a big question here: how many different assumptions people are making based on what we know later on in the story, right? What are people's, perspectives on the situation which we later can only find out by how it unfolds, but they're living in that world. So what are they supposing? What are they convinced of, and so on? So Bill and then Jen.
I don't really have anything to say. I don't know what I was thinking of, so I'll defer to Jen.
Go ahead.
I actually have more questions and suppositions. Like, I don't know what Esther wants at this point. Is she aiming to be queen, or does she just want out of this? It doesn't seem like, at this point, I don't think Haman is plotting anything against Jews, right? Does that come about because he doesn't like Mordecai? I don't actually remember. I'm sorry.
Yeah, that didn't happen yet.
Yeah, so right now it doesn't seem like Mordecai is being mistreated or anything. So it doesn't seem like there's any danger in being identified as Jewish. Although if she is aiming to be queen, then she loses this thing where everybody thinks she's their own nationality and she'll fight for them, she'll be on their side. So I don't know, I think not knowing what Esther wants is really difficult here, because It could be, she could be preserving the mystery to become queen, or preserving the mystery because she really wants out of there and she just doesn't want this guy even, he wants her to grow tired of her or whatever. So, don't know.
So I'm going to wait on that till we turn the page a little bit and get a little bit more discussion from the Gemara. It's going to get more sharpened, I think, in order to be able to deal with that. But still, at this point, I think that generally speaking, what we have been seeing from the Gemara is the Gemara certainly reads this whole story with a great sense of anxiety about the place of the Jews in this society. And we've had the whole business about the drinking at the party, the vessels. These are temple vessels. Each one of the rulers is calculating whether or not they have to worry about the Jewish people's insurgency, or whether there's going to be some new development that's going to bring the Jews back to autonomy.
And yet they provide kosher meals at the party. So
No. Only secretly Hege. That was the whole point of that story.
Oh, I see.
He's sneaking in for her this thing. But of course, that also.
I thought the rabbis imagined that they could be at that party because there was a kosher table.
So this was again. So this is part of the anxiety. The anxiety. Do we fit in? Do we not fit in? How
Are we white? Are we white yet? I don't know.
Are we right? Are we safe, or are we not safe? At what prices are being safe? I mean, do we want to fit into this society? After all, theoretically, we want to go back home. So these people we are at the mercy of this ruler's whims. So I think the word anxiety is a very important word for us to understand here. We don't read it that way. When we read the Megillah, we read it, as happy-go-lucky until and then the villain comes in with the black hat. So yes, we haven't had that Haman moment yet, but for the rabbis, this has been a very uneasy situation because it's all under the shadow of our exile and our subjugation to these people. So they're not very secure. Then you can go one step further. Certainly some people, and this is, I think, where we're going to be reading the Mordecai Esther decisions, some of them are not trusting the security of the Jewish people in this situation. And I would say that the simplest way for us to understand what's going on here is Mordecai is telling Esther not to tell her origin, because if she tells her origin, she will not get chosen to be the queen. That she's going to be eliminated. She's going to be disqualified.
So
right? She doesn't tell Achashverosh that she's Jewish until the last minute, right? And she's resistant to that whole thing, and then finally she breaks it to him. You want to kill my people, that means me too. So but that's only after he proves that basically he is so besotted with her and he's so devoted to her that she's semi-safe. So I'm suggesting right now, just to make it simple, I'm suggesting right now that the operating assumption is we're tolerated, but we're not accepted, difference, right? And that it would not be a feather in Achashverosh's cap to choose a Jewish woman as his queen. So we have to not do that. Now, so good. So don't be chosen as the queen.
Yeah, so she could have just told him. If she didn't want to be queen, then she could have just said, oh, by the way, I'm totally Jewish.
So that's the tension. So that's the next tension that we're going to unpack a little bit more. And that is good. So who asks you to be the queen? What do you need it for? Yeah. Right? And apparently that's the other, clear conviction here, if we don't have Esther as the queen, if we don't have somebody planted in the palace, we're going to be in trouble. And then it unfolds. Indeed, had Esther not been in the palace, Haman would have had his way, and we wouldn't be able to tell the story.
Do you think we have to read into any agency for, like, I don't feel like Esther's, we don't really know what she wants. Or, I mean, I guess she could have said, hey, I'm totally Jewish. All my family is, so if you don't want to have Jewish in-laws, don't pick me. But if like this, we don't know what she wants, actually. Is she just
So
going to?
that's what I'm saying. That's an important question. I want to wait till we turn the page.
Got it. Sorry.
We spend a little, right? Okay. So, yeah, David.
I would just observe that in this atmosphere of anxiety of the Jewish people in this place, that it turns out that Mordecai is rather far schemingly, maybe far seeing and knowing or planning for the eventuality that he may need a back door to reach the king. And
Yeah. This is right. This is all that this whole reading posits that Mordecai is incredibly astute, very farsighted, very iron-willed in terms of being willing to take these gambles and make some very, very difficult decisions. Yeah, everything that was not done by our Department of Defense in order to try to help the people in Afghanistan, right? He has all of the willingness to plan ahead, foresee the difficulties, and try to meet them. Which brings us to, I think you were asking this question a little bit also, David. What the heck is going on here with Mordecai with making this this suggestion? Is he playing what's it playing like playing chicken? That there's a like something like that, like he's how far is he willing to go here with this plan? He's giving Achashverosh this suggestion, this advice, in order for Esther to crack and tell her secret, but he doesn't want her to tell the secret, does he? So look at 74.
Note 74. As Mordecai was the one who instructed Esther not to reveal her origins to Achashverosh, why would he advise as to how to elicit the information from Esther? Maharsha suggests that Mordecai's true hope was that when Achashverosh would again gather the maidens, he would find one that he liked more than Esther.
What do you think of that?
I mean,
I think it's a misunderstanding of the whole flow of our Gemara. That's what I was arguing before.
Then he could have just told them it was Jewish. I mean,
right, and then Mordecai shouldn't have let her go in there to begin with.
In the first place, yeah.
So if he doesn't want her to be queen, if he doesn't feel it's absolutely necessary to do this, then I hope now maybe he'll get somebody else to be queen. It doesn't make any sense to me. No. I think it's not a good suggestion. So there's another suggestion that's made by another commentator, which I think is more to the point, which is Mordecai plays with Achashverosh's prejudices, even though he knows that it's not going to work. Now, as he goes out, he plays the hale and hearty guy that shares in the kind of misogynistic, manipulative ideas that we have here, which says, you know how women are. Of course, you know how you're going to get her to say what the truth, because you just get her to be a little jealous. It'll be fine, and that's it, right? So he's playing along with Achashverosh, even though he knows Esther. And as we'll turn the page, we'll see this gets even more acute. That she's not going to get fooled by this. She's not going to get jealous and all of a sudden go, no, I have to tell you who I am, right? He knows it very well. but he knows that Achashverosh can be manipulated, and this is a further manipulation
Yeah.
that at least solidifies to a certain extent the closeness that Achashverosh will have with Mordecai, right? So there's a lot of double dealing here, a lot of manipulation, shrewdness, intrigue kinds of things, even more than we normally would imagine. I think that that's a much more insightful approach. David.
This is only chapter 2 of the Megillah. As I recollect, at this point, Mordecai's association with Esther was known, but that he is Jewish was not yet commonly known. Well, Achashverosh would know.
No, we dealt with this already. He's Jewish, but he's claiming that he has no idea what she is.
That's
That
right.
she's a foundling. That he was just out of the goodness of his heart. He took in this person who he doesn't know really much about her, and he's lying about all of his real relationship with her.
And so it might be significant in a way that Achashverosh would rely on him for advice, except that he would know something about how she thinks. So maybe it's
Right.
not.
Right. But then again, how does Mordecai use that opportunity? So is he really trying to sabotage Esther's chances? So Maharsha says, yeah, he's trying to sabotage Esther's chances, and he's trying to get somebody else to be picked queen. And I think that that's not a good reading.
I think at the end of the day, his playing chicken in this way builds his credibility with the king. They're putting their heads together. Let's try to figure something out. Let's
Right.
try this. And it didn't work.
Exactly. Right. And he's the king feels he's on his wavelength. He's one of the guys.
Right.
Yeah. All right. So we're the last couple of lines on 13a5.
The Gemara digresses from its interpretation of the Megillah. Rabbi Elazar said, what is the meaning of the verse? Excuse me. He, God, does not withdraw his eyes from a righteous person.
Right. 13b1.
He, God, does not withdraw his eyes from a righteous person. It means that God is ever mindful of the deeds of the righteous and rewards them measure for measure, even generations later, as illustrated by the following. As a reward for the modesty that was exhibited by Rachel, she merited that the modest Saul descend from her. And as a reward for the modesty that was exhibited by Saul, he merited that the modest Esther descend from him.
Okay, so that's the chain reaction, so to speak. One person's righteousness in a specific way of being then follows through into the next generations and so on, and it goes on and on. So we have this from Rachel to Saul to Esther. Okay, but now we back up and we say, okay, let's get the full story with the Rachel story. And here we have a well-known midrash about how Rachel behaved back in the day when she and Jacob were supposed to get married. Remember, they fall in love. Jacob is super, super in love with her. He goes to her father and he says, I'll work for your daughter for 7 years. I don't have any money. I can't offer you anything, but I'll be your servant for 7 years. Just give me, your daughter's hand in marriage. And Lavan says, sure, right? Okay, so here we go.
And what was the modesty exhibited by Rachel? That is, where do we see that she displayed modesty? For it is written, and Jacob told Rachel that he was the brother of her father. Now, was Jacob really the brother of her father? Was he not rather the son of Rebekah, her father's sister? Rather, this is what transpired.
Okay, so when the story is that when they first meet at the well, so he introduces himself and he tells her, I'm family, I'm mishpacha, we're related. But the way that he says they're related is not accurate, right? So he says, Achi avich, right? I am your father's brother, which would make him her uncle, right? But he's not, right? He's a cousin. So what gives? Okay.
Rather, this is what transpired. He said to Rachel, "Will you marry me?" She answered him, "Yes. However, I must warn you that my father is a deceiver, and you will not be able to outwit him." He said to her, "I am his brother in deceit. That is, I am a match for him." This is what Jacob meant when he told Rachel that he was the brother of her father.
Right. So
Rachel-
I'm as much like your brother as your brother is. Right. Don't worry. I can handle this love.
I can handle him. Yeah.
Right. And of course, we know that Jacob considered himself, or we consider him to be, a pretty dubious character. So here it's part of the story in the romance. I'll be able to do this. I'll be able to take your hand in marriage. I won't get fooled.
Rachel then asked him, "Are the righteous permitted to act deceitfully?" He answered her, "Yes, they are, when others are trying to deceive them, as it is written, with a pure person you act purely, with a crooked person you act crookedly."
Right. Somehow Chidi and Kant didn't know about this particular thing.
No, apparently not.
Yeah.
A flaw in their education.
Yeah.
Jacob asked her, "What deceit would he use against me?" She answered him, "I have a sister, Leah, who is older than I, and my father will not marry me off before he marries her off. He will therefore try to trick you into marrying her instead of me." To prevent this from occurring, Jacob gave Rachel signs, that is, passwords, through which she would be able to identify her as Rachel, thereby preventing Laban from substituting Leah for Rachel. When the wedding night arrived, and Rachel saw that her father was indeed planning on secretly substituting Leah for her, she said to herself, "Now my sister will be put to shame, for Jacob will ask her for the passwords, and she will not know them."
Okay, so let's just stop for a second. This is a classic story. Maybe you've heard it before, and for me, it's a very touching human story. Right? We have this romantic encounter. Rachel and Jacob love at first sight. They want to be together. They know that there's going to be some family obstacles here from Rachel's side, and they make up a secret compact, right? They make up, special, code that only they share, right? To a certain extent, this is a little bit what the Purim story, is developing for us as well. There's this intriguey kind of stuff, and who do you have to outsmart and so on. And these two young lovers are going to outsmart her father by sharing this thing that nobody else has, right? And that's part of being in love also, right? Is you have this kind of like secret sharing that nobody else has a part of. But then push comes to shove, and Rachel at the wedding night sees what her father is doing. And she has a really, really tough decision to make, right? Who does she stay faithful to? If she holds on to the secret between herself and Jacob, then her sister, who knows nothing about this, but who is being manipulated by her father, and she has no choice but to go along with it. We have to understand that. This comes back to the agency question, right? This is a clear case where the woman is being just handled like an object. But she's not. She's a human being, and that's what Rachel understands. My sister is a human being. She has a heart. So what do I do here? Do I allow her to be humiliated? Right? Jacob will go into the tent with her. She won't know the code. He'll run out and yell and scream, and Leah will be completely ashamed, shamed and ashamed for being rejected as this this totally undesirable person. So what do I do? What do I do? Do I betray the secrets that I share with Jacob in order to save my sister's honor? Or do I stay steadfast with our connection between me and Jacob, and let the chips fall where they may. This is sacred. This is what we have together is sacred. And as we know, the marriage to Leah goes forward, right? So according to the Midrash, it could only have gone forward because of Rachel's decision. So here we have this a very poignant kind of story about agency in a place of no agency, right? And it's tragic, right? But it's nevertheless, it's real. Rachel actually makes a meaningful choice. She could have gone either way. So she has the power here to decide what will happen, and she chooses to save her sister's honor to some extent. Obviously, then it comes out and Jacob is outraged and so on. But nevertheless, Leah is married. She's married, and she's she becomes the mother of the children of Jacob, the children of Israel. Okay, I mean, and we follow the rest of that complicated story in the Torah reading. So here, Rachel is at the crux of this moral dilemma. So let's start from, she said to herself, now my sister will be put to shame.
Now my sister will be put to shame, for Jacob will ask her for the passwords, and she will not know them. She therefore conveyed the prearranged signs to her, Leah, and thus it is written, and it came to pass in the morning, and behold, it was Leah. Is this to imply that until now in the morning it was not Leah? Certainly not. Rather, through the prearranged signs that Rachel conveyed to Leah, Jacob did not know until now in the morning that it was Leah and not Rachel. Therefore, because
then we'll get to Shoal in a second. So this is the Gemara sees this as a great act of righteousness, of compassion, and of goodness, that she did this. And the idea is, V'hinei Leah, what a shock. In the morning, it turns out that it's Leah. How did that be? What kind of shock? How did she get through the whole night without being Leah? The answer is because she had all of these secrets of intimacy that Rachel shared with her. So Leah learned all of those intimate details, and she could impersonate Rachel throughout the entire evening, and then her identity is only discovered in the daytime. Let's remember what we said a little while ago in praise of Achashverosh, right? At least he doesn't sleep with people in the daytime, right? Only at night, right? Then at the nighttime when the intimacy is the most intense, right? So here we have the irony of it, right? Yes, the nighttime is a place of great intimacy, but also of great mystery. So you could think you're being intimate. Jacob thinks he's being intimate with one person, and it ends up not being that person at all. So it's a funny kind of upending of that positive idea. But nevertheless, when it comes to Rachel's choice, this is considered an act of great courage and of great goodness on her part. So she lets her sister have these things. She puts her sister in front of her, right? She puts her sister's well-being before her own. Okay.
Therefore, because Rachel acted modestly, she merited that the modest Saul descend from her. And what modesty did Saul exhibit? For it is written, but of the matter of the kingdom of which Samuel spoke, he did not tell him. Therefore, he merited that the modest Esther descend from him.
Okay, let's take a look at note number 9. What does it mean that Rachel, why are we characterizing this as Rachel's modesty?
Modesty, exactly, my question. The meaning of Rashi's comments here is not entirely clear. See Rashash. Perhaps he means the following. Apparently, the meaning of tzniut, modesty, in the context of this Gemara, is the capacity to keep private matters concealed and not reveal them to others. confer Rabbeinu Yonah to Mishnah, etc. It was a sign of Rachel's capacity for such privacy that the matter of the prearranged signs did not become publicized in the 7 years that elapsed before her wedding date. Had it been known that Jacob had arranged passwords with Rachel, Laban would never have attempted substituting Leah for Rachel.
Okay. So what do we, this extra little insight that we have from this note?
It's not enlightening me.
It's not? All right. Wait a few seconds more.
Okay.
We're going to try to turn the voltage up a little bit. Maybe it'll get
Okay.
brighter.
Well, I am the slowest one in my group, so
Don't
Temper
stop
your-
bragging. Stop bragging. Be modest.
temper your hopes.
Be modest. Be modest and don't brag so much. What this notice is saying, the way I would couch it, is Rachel and Jacob have a secret, right? Has anybody, you don't have to answer this question. Has anybody ever had to keep a secret, a secret that conveys a sense of specialness, right? When you have a secret that you and only one other person or whatever, that secrets are a treasure. They're very, very valuable, right? Secret societies, they take a sense of their importance from the fact that they've got a secret that nobody else has, secrets that two people share, best friends, right? This is like a sign of, I'm only sharing this special piece of information with you. But then, because it's so special, how many people would like to keep a secret? I have, $1 million. I found $1 million in my pocket. How many people would like to keep that secret? When, yeah. It reminds me of a joke, actually. I can tell the joke soon. But there's a great temptation that to give up secrets, to tell other people that you have a secret. I've got a secret. Don't tell anybody else, but I'm going to tell you about this secret, because you need that extra affirmation from the other person who knows that you've got this special secret. So sharing secrets is a way of aggrandizing oneself. Sharing secrets is a way of making your own self feel that you are being seen as somebody important, because you've got these secrets. So you must be really important. So the tzniut, the modesty of Rachel, is that she held on to this secret forever, for 7 years. Nobody had an inkling that this special code or intimate knowledge that only she and Jacob had was theirs and theirs alone. And again, I would say many people can keep those kinds of secrets, but many people can't. Many people like, or whatever, they feel compelled, special private things that happen between you and the person that you're close to. You have to tell somebody else. Whether that other person that you share the secret with is happy with that, or unfortunately, many times not. But you tell your best friend about what you and your lover are involved in. And because you need to be able to say, look, I've got this special thing. How can that special thing be recognized if nobody knows about it? So Rachel is able to hold on to that intimate secret and not give it away for 7 years. Right? And therefore, when she tells Leah, it can work. Right? Therefore, it ends up being effective. So I'll tell you just a joke that's reminded me of. We're coming close to the high holidays. So the joke is that Yankel Shmerel wakes up Yom Kippur morning, and it's a gorgeous September day. It's not too hot anymore. It's not winter time yet. It's absolutely glorious. And he looks out the window and he goes, what a day for a game of golf. this would be such a perfect day. He's struggling with his conscience. What is he going to do? It's Yom Kippur. He's supposed to go to shul, and he's like, it's a monumental struggle. Finally, he says, "This is a once in a lifetime," and he takes his golf clubs and he runs to the golf course, and of course, there's nobody there. There's nobody there, it's an old joke. It's fun. It used to be a Jewish country club. So there's nobody there. And his heart is pounding. The sun is shining. The birds are singing. And this is all part of the joke. This is all part of the standard way of telling the joke. He tees up, and then he hits the ball, and it soars into the blue sky, and then it lands on the green and bounces and bounces, a hole in one. He hits a hole in one. The angels in heaven are in an uproar, and they go to God and they say, "God, where's the justice? The guy completely violates Yom Kippur, and you reward him with a hole in one." And God says, "Who's he going to tell?" So that's it. That's the story, right? And actually, Zelda told a story recently that she was in a group, and this was whenever it was, a couple of years ago, and Hamilton was the hot ticket, right? And of course, it's expensive as anything, and you couldn't get any it's like waiting, forever. And one person in the group says, "I just saw Hamilton." So they go, "What? You just saw Hamilton? How did you get to be able to see Hamilton?" And she said, "It was Yom Kippur." So that's it. So don't say I said this to anybody.
Absolutely not.
It's not a piece of advice. Okay, so back to this. So the reward is that generations later, Saul descends from Rachel. Saul is from the tribe of Benjamin. Benjamin is Rachel's second son, right? So what's the story with Benjamin? What's the story with Saul? So look at note, what modesty did Saul exhibit? So look at note 10.
Note 10 from 1 Samuel 10:16. After Samuel anointed Saul as king, Saul met his uncle, who asked him where he had been. Saul replied that he had gone to look for the lost donkeys, and that when he could not find them, he went to seek counsel from Samuel.
All correct, all accurate. This is true.
When his uncle asked him what Samuel had told him, Saul replied only that Samuel had told him that the donkeys had already been found. Saul, however, was modest in that he did not reveal to his uncle that he had been anointed king, conferred Maharsha.
Right.
Maharsha.
So that's the point. So he's this kind of very, quiet, unassuming guy. And of course, that's his strength, and that's also his tragedy in the end. But at this point, when Samuel meets him, he knows that this is the guy that God wants to be king over Israel. And he says, well, besides the fact that you're looking for your lost donkeys, let me tell you where they are. But by the way, let me make you king of Israel. So that happens at that point. And then when he then comes back with the donkeys, and the uncle says, what happened to you today? Nothing much. I lost the donkeys. I found the donkeys. And he doesn't say that he was anointed king of Israel because he's such a modest person. So that's Saul's inherent modesty. And therefore, he merits, in parallelism, again, measure for measure, he merits to have Esther be his descendant. And therefore, she is rightfully, appropriately, a chip off the old block, so to speak. Let's just look at 11 for a second.
Note 11. The text of the Gemara as recorded in Ein Yaakov continues. And regarding Esther, what was her modesty? As it is written, Esther told nothing of her kindred or her people. See Ben Yehoyada. Esther, who was of royal descent, could have brought herself honor by telling Ahasuerus who she was. Nevertheless, she kept the matter private and did not reveal it.
Okay, so again, we have these complications. Was it a good idea for her not to say who she was? Could she have gotten, a leg up, literally, by telling who she was? She's not saying who she is, right? This is part of a family tradition, right? And a family talent. Okay, here we go, a little bit more, the Gemara. Where are you? No, you're on mute. I didn't hear that.
I'm sorry. The Gemara has...
I didn't hear that expletive. You want to...
Good. The Gemara has cited Rabbi Elazar's interpretation of the beginning of the verse in Job 36:7. The Gemara now cites Rabbi Elazar's interpretation of the end of that verse. And Rabbi Elazar said, when the Holy One, blessed is he, assigns greatness to a person, he assigns it to his descendants for all generations. As it says, he establishes them forever, and they are exalted, etc. But if as a result of his greatness he becomes haughty, the Holy One, blessed is he, lowers him, as it says in the next verse, and if they are bound in chains, etc.
Okay, so this is the kind of a Shakespearean warning against hubris, right? Or even a classic warning. If God has great things in store for you, don't let it go to your head, right? God wants to give you a gift of great success, of prestige, of achievement. So, okay, God wants that to keep on going, and God wants that to sustain itself. It's a good thing. When God gives you something good, God wants it to continue to be good. But if you make it into, it's all about me, then you're losing the point, and then you will lose the goodness as well. So this is the balancing between feeling grateful and recognizing how special things are for you, but not making it be a value judgment. Oh, that means that I must be the most special person in the entire world, right? So the point is to be cognizant of your entitlements, your privileges, without then deeming yourself to be entitled and privileged. When we talk in the traditional prayer book, there's a special rabbinic teaching. Every place where you have the Holy Blessed One described as being great, Sham ata motzei et anvetanuto. That's exactly where you find God's lowliness. In other words, God bending down and taking care of the needy, right? That when we say that God is great, God is the greatest, almighty, right? Why? Because God picks up the people that fall down, and God gives a healing to people who are suffering. So that's the balancing that each and every one of us in the image of God, that's what we're all challenged to achieve, right? To be as empowered as we can be without letting the power corrupt us. And we're going to get now to this last little paragraph, which again will talk very, very much to the mystery that Jen brought up before about Esther. The Megillah continues. We're now on 13b2.
Megillah continues, and the bidding of Mordecai, Esther did. The Gemara explains. Rabbi Yirmiyah said, this teaches us that she used to show menstrual blood to the sages to determine if she was a nida. The verse concludes, just as she was when she was raised with him. Rabbi Bar Lima said in the name of Rav, this indicates that she used to rise from the bosom of Achashverosh and immerse herself and sit in the bosom of Mordecai.
Okay, so here we've got some pretty dicey stuff. So the first part is about she abided by all of the rules of Nida, right? Nida means being a menstrual.
True.
So it says here, and the bidding of Mordecai, Esther did. Okay, and you have a note that it's a verse, but the point being that, you know, what does it mean that she's following Mordecai's instructions? If you look at the verse, hold on a second. The verse says, the whole verse is, I think it's supposed to be helpful here, right? It says, Esther would not say her birthplace or her people, just as Mordecai had commanded her, right? And whatever Mordecai said, Esther would do just as when she was raised by him. So there's a doubling, right? The first part is she follows Mordecai's advice and never tells who she is, right? But then it says, and she listens to Mordecai. She always listened to Mordecai. So what's the extra piece here? That she always listened to Mordecai. She listened to Mordecai. Mordecai told her not to do it. We got it already. We got the point. So it must be about other things. So here's the first part of it. First part of it is that she used to show menstrual blood to the sages, okay, to determine if she was a nida. So let's look at 17.
Note 17. When a woman menstruates, she is rendered a nida and forbidden to have marital relations, only if the discharge is one of the 5 reddish colors enumerated in the Mishnah in Nida 19a. Questionable colors must be shown to a sage to determine whether or not they indicate a nida state. Thus, Esther used to show samples of her discharged blood to the sages to determine whether she was a nida. For, as the Gemara proceeds to say, even after Achashverosh took her as a wife, she remained married to Mordecai. She therefore had to know when she was forbidden to have relations with Mordecai, according to Maharsha.
Okay, so this is based on the standard practice in Jewish law with regard to married women. If you have menstrual discharge, you are a menstruant, and you are forbidden to have sexual relations until you become ritually purified. But what is a menstrual discharge? What constitutes the kind of bloody discharge that disqualifies you from having intimate relations? So this is a pretty intimate idea. This is a pretty intimate question, and forever and ever, the answer is, if you have any doubt, I'm staining, I'm doing whatever it is, what the discharge, the nature of that discharge is, you have to go to the rabbi. So imagine what this means. This is, again, a little bit now of a theme of intimacy and secrecy is being taught about here in different ways. This is the most intimate for the woman, right? This is her own most intimate bodily experience. And she now has to bring this to a man to judge what it is, right? So this is the way the system has worked forever and ever. And this is part of now Esther's sense of fidelity to tradition, fidelity to Mordecai. She was raised by Mordecai to be a good Jewish woman and to listen and to obey and to follow the rules. So even though this is something that today we would say our bodies ourselves, a woman should have control over this for herself, she's constantly ceding, C-E-D-E, whatever it is, how you ever pronounce it, right? Giving over her status determination to the sages, to the rabbis, who are males, of course. Yeah, Jen would, and then we're not going to have time to continue. We're going to have to resume this discussion later. But yeah, what are you going to say?
Okay, so real quick, actually another take on that though is it normalizes having your period and being able to discuss it like a normal medical thing and not having to be shamed, etc. And it normalizes the fact that you can have breakthrough bleeding or bleeding of other kinds and all sorts of things can be going on. So not saying that the sages were necessarily the qualified doctors, unless they were like Maimonides or something, but I feel like it's in a positive way. It makes it like, this is a normal thing that happens to people. It's a medical thing and we should be able to talk about it. And if I have a period migraine, I want to be able to say so. And that's why I'm going home from work. So
Right.
yeah, there it is.
Oh, that's a very important point. And that's definitely part of it. How it works out in real life, of course, is much more complicated than that. And the struggle for women over the millennia to have this simple biological, physical process be treated as a physical biological process that doesn't have curses, to it, and that doesn't have stigmas to it. That struggle is not finished yet. So to a certain extent, yes, this reality and this practice participates both ways. It can be seen as a very humane and no nonsense acceptance of the facts of life. But we also know that unfortunately people are not always ready to go that way. We'll continue with this next time.
Can I add one thing?
Sure.
Have you seen the big article in New Jersey Jewish News about our own Jennifer Moses? It's a
No.
big cover story in this week's paper,
Oh, yeah?
Jersey Jewish News. And of course, she mentions that she's a member of Shomrei.
Of course she says that.
But it's all about her writing and her
You can't
art.
keep a secret. That's the problem.
It's a really good article.
Excellent. Good. I look forward to looking at it. Thank you.
Have a
Joshua,
good
Okay.
week, everybody.
See you
Joshua,
around. See you.
Bill, give me a call.
yes, okay.